The man you see right here is Alejandro Caceres. By profession, he's a cybersecurity researcher, the kind of person companies hire to break into their own systems before someone else does. But at a certain point, this work stopped being just a job for him. Because North Korean hackers, connected to one of the most dangerous state intelligence operations on the planet, came after him personally. This video is the dangerous and extraordinary story of how that single act of aggression turned a quiet researcher into a one-man cyber army. The story of why he started leaving his house wearing a Kevlar-lined jacket, and the story of what happens when a private citizen decides to go to war with the most isolated regime on Earth. Alejandro Caceres is a Colombian American, and if you heard his background before you heard his story, you would never place him anywhere near this kind of trouble. As a child, he was analytically curious in a way that set him apart. Mathematics wasn't a subject he endured. It was something he found genuinely enjoyable. Physics was the class he actually looked forward to. These weren't passing interests. They became the lens through which he saw everything. At Duke University, he double majored in physics and mathematics, not computer science, not cybersecurity. The instinct driving him wasn't to build systems or attack them. It was to understand how complex things hold together. What are the underlying rules? Why do certain structures stay stable under pressure while others collapse completely? That question eventually pulled him toward the darker corners of the internet. After completing graduate work in international science and technology policy, with a research focus on cyber intelligence methods, he began spending serious time in hacker forums, dark web communities, not as a participant, as a researcher. He went by the handle Hyperion, the Greek titan who watches the world from above. For someone whose entire approach was observation and analysis, it was the only name that made sense. What he watched, he absorbed. Slowly, without fully realizing it, he was learning the mechanics of the very thing he was studying. And that knowledge eventually had to go somewhere. He built a company, called it Hyperion Grey. The work was penetration testing, the practice of attacking a client's own systems the way a real adversary would, mapping every vulnerability before someone with worse intentions finds them, and producing detailed reports on exactly how to close each gap. For someone with Alejandro's analytical background, it was a completely natural fit. By early 2021, the business was running well. He had clients. He had a routine. He had a life that made complete sense. Then someone sent him a file, the file that started a war. Late January 2021, a message arrives through a mutual contact, another researcher in the same professional community. The tone is casual, friendly. They've been developing a new tool and would value his perspective. Could he take a look? The file comes over. It's a Visual Studio project, the standard development environment format used across the software industry. Nothing unusual about the extension. Nothing that immediately raises an alarm. Alejandro does what any security researcher with disciplined habits does. He opens it inside a virtual machine. Think of it as a sealed room inside his computer, completely isolated from the actual system underneath. Whatever runs inside stays inside. It cannot reach the real machine. It's the standard precaution for handling anything of uncertain origin. And on this particular afternoon, it's the precaution that saves him. He scrolls through the code, nothing obviously wrong at a quick glance. He closes the file and goes back to his work. Then his phone rings. The mutual contact who passed along the file is panicking. He has been looking at his own copy more carefully, and something doesn't belong there. His voice is urgent. He tells Alejandro to go back and look again. Alejandro reopens the file. This time, he reads it the way he reads everything when something is actually at stake, slowly, methodically, line by line. Not skimming for surface errors, but following the actual logic of every function, every call, every instruction buried inside thousands of lines of code. And there it is, a backdoor, not a crude one, a carefully engineered data exfiltration protocol, a hidden channel designed to quietly pull information out of whatever system executed the file and send it somewhere else. The kind of construction you spend real time on when you need invisible, persistent access to someone else's machine, hidden deep enough that a casual review won't catch it. Designed to look, at first glance, like it belongs there. The same day Alejandro finds it, Google publishes a blog post that puts everything in context. North Korean state-sponsored hackers had been running a targeted campaign against Western cybersecurity researchers. The method, booby-trapped files, delivered through trusted professional contacts, designed to exploit the exact tools that researchers use every day. The goal, steal hacking techniques, harvest vulnerability research, extract the intellectual property of the people who find and document the world's most dangerous security flaws. Pyongyang's hackers had been hunting the hunters. Alejandro looks at the back door in his file. He looks at Google's description of the campaign. The match is exact. North Korea had tried to hack him, personally, a nation-state intelligence operation, targeting a private individual at his desk. He reports it immediately. He's a professional. He knows the right channels. He files the report with the appropriate authorities, lays out the technical evidence clearly, explains exactly what the file contained and what it was built to do. He has done everything correctly. He expects the system to respond in kind. An FBI agent reaches out, takes his statement, and then nothing. No follow-up. No update on any investigation. No guidance on protecting himself going forward. No indication that anyone in any official capacity intends to do anything meaningful about the fact that a foreign intelligence service directly targeted an American citizen in his own home. Weeks pass, then months. The silence is total. If you enjoy this kind of story, please consider subscribing to the channel, leaving a like, and dropping a comment below. I read every single one, and your support genuinely means more than you might expect. Alejandro sits with that silence and reaches the only conclusion it supports. There's really nobody on our side, not with bitterness exactly. More like a person who has run the numbers carefully, arrived at an answer he didn't want, and accepted it anyway. He has spent his career protecting other people's systems from exactly this kind of threat. He has been directly targeted by one of the most aggressive state hacking programs in the world. And the institutional response, from every direction, is the same. Figure it out yourself. For most people, that answer is where the story ends. You file the report, acknowledge the outcome, and move on. Alejandro is not most people. The idea doesn't arrive all at once. It grows. At first, it's just a question he can't stop turning over. What would it actually take? How exposed is their infrastructure, really? What does North Korea's internet even look like from the outside? He starts looking, not attacking, not yet, just observing, mapping. The methodical work of a researcher who needs to understand a system before he decides what to do with it. What he finds is not what he expected. North Korea's presence on the global internet is almost incomprehensibly small. a handful of networks, a few dozen websites. The entire country's external digital footprint would be modest for a regional private company. And everything, every site, every server visible to the outside world, flows through an extraordinarily limited number of connection points. He runs port scans from his own location. Then he rents roughly 40 servers distributed across different countries, including China, to see whether the results change depending on where the queries originate. They don't. No matter which country, no matter which IP address, every response comes back through the same two primary servers. The entire external internet presence of a sovereign nation-state funneled through 2 points. It should have signaled a tightly controlled, carefully hardened architecture. A digital fortress with no obvious doors. It didn't. What sits underneath is not hardened, it's neglected. Known vulnerabilities, unpatched for years. Not obscure, zero-day flaws requiring advanced research. Basic, documented, widely understood weaknesses in standard software. Outdated versions of Apache. A bug in an old version of Nginx that crashes the entire system if you send it a single, malformed header. Errors so fundamental that the rest of the world had fixed them years ago. North Korea had spent decades projecting the image of an impenetrable, militarized state. Their internet infrastructure was a screen door. It's pretty interesting, Alejandro would later say, how easy it was to actually have some effect in there. He is no longer simply a researcher asking questions. He spends months building the tools, custom scripts, automated systems designed to do at scale what one person cannot do manually. The code scans North Korean servers, identifies which ones are currently online, then hits them with precisely targeted requests engineered around their specific, known vulnerabilities. In structure, it's a denial of service attack, overwhelming servers until they can no longer respond. But it isn't random noise. Every element is calibrated to North Korea's particular weaknesses. The system finds the exact architectural fragility and applies precisely enough pressure to collapse it. He also thinks carefully about operational secrecy. If North Korea identifies who's hitting them, they have options. They've already demonstrated a willingness to target individuals directly. A state intelligence service that sent a booby-trapped file to a private researcher is not an operation known for restraint. So he constructs a persona, P4X, pronounced Pax, the Latin word for peace, carried as a quiet irony by a man building a precision weapon. Under this alias, he operates entirely from the shadows. No real name, no location, no face attached to the handle. By January 2022, everything is ready. The code is loaded. The targets are mapped. The rented cloud servers are standing by. He sits down at his desk in his Miami home, verifies his tools one final time, and launches the attack. The first moments are almost anticlimactic. No alarm, no explosion, just streams of data leaving his machine and traveling towards servers on the other side of the planet. He watches his monitoring tools for a moment, then walks back to his living room. An alien movie on the television, spicy corn chips. The deliberate performance of an ordinary evening while something far from ordinary runs in the background. Every few minutes, he pauses the film and walks back to his office to check. First check, some sites slowing. Second check, several servers failing to respond. Third check, North Korea's public-facing websites beginning to time out, one after another, like lights going out across a building floor by floor. Air Koryo, the state airline booking portal, down. Naenara, the official government web portal, down. KCNA, the state news agency, down. He pulls up an independent web monitoring service and searches for North Korea's domains. The uptime charts are almost entirely red. Outages across every property simultaneously. He keeps the scripts running. Night after night, the automation continues without pause. It scans for servers that have recovered, then hits them again, crashes them again, moves to the next target. The campaign is relentless, not because Alejandro is awake at his keyboard around the clock. The code runs without him, but because the system he built gives it no reason to stop. North Korea goes dark, then darker, then, for entire stretches of hours, completely offline. One man in pajamas had just switched off a country. The world notices. Among the small, specialized community whose professional purpose is monitoring North Korea's digital activity, analysts, researchers, intelligence observers, the outage is impossible to rationalize. An entire country's internet does not simply go down, not at this scale, not sustained over multiple days. The speculation is immediate and confident. This is state-sponsored. The timing, the precision, the duration, only a government-level operation could execute something of this scope. U.S. Cyber Command, the NSA. A coordinated classified strike in direct response to the missile provocations Kim Jong-un had been conducting just days earlier. Senior researchers publish their analysis. Intelligence journalists write their stories. The narrative hardens almost overnight. A world power had delivered a message to Pyongyang, written in the language that authoritarian regimes understand more clearly than diplomacy. And P4X, reading every word of it from his home office in Miami, doesn't correct anyone. He finds the whole spectacle quietly satisfying. The world's most credentialed intelligence analysts, speaking with full professional confidence, attributing his personal vendetta to the combined cyber capabilities of the American national security apparatus. The confusion serves him perfectly. As long as the world believes a government is behind the attacks, North Korea calibrates its response toward governments. Diplomatic backchannels, counter-operations aimed at institutional infrastructure, not at a single private researcher eating corn chips in a home office. He stays in the shadows. The attacks continue. Inside North Korea, the outages register almost entirely as a matter of regime embarrassment rather than national crisis. Fewer than 1% of ordinary North Koreans have any access to the global internet. What P4X has taken offline is the external-facing layer, the propaganda portals, the state news feeds, the official web presence built not for citizens, but for international audiences. On the streets of Pyongyang, daily life is unchanged. The average person notices nothing. For the leadership, the reality is different. External communications are disrupted. Official web operations are crippled. And beneath the practical inconvenience sits something far more damaging. The regime that presents itself as technically formidable, militarily advanced, impervious to outside pressure, has just been publicly shut off by an unknown actor who found the entire exercise remarkably easy. The Hermit Kingdom looks fragile, and it has no idea who to blame. Weeks into the campaign, Alejandro starts thinking further. Knocking websites offline makes a point. It's disruptive, symbolic, a demonstration of capability. But embarrassment fades. A propaganda site that goes dark for a week is back the following month, and the regime pretends nothing happened. If the actual goal is to hold North Korea genuinely accountable, to pull back the curtain rather than just flicker the lights, denial of service is only the opening move. He wants inside. Not just to crash their servers, but to breach them. to extract the documents, the communications, the internal records that the most secretive government on Earth has spent decades making sure no one outside would ever see. He knows he cannot do this alone, not at the scale he's imagining, and not without burning out within months. So he makes a decision that surprises even the people who know him. He builds a coalition, quietly, a dark website, a signal fire for others who were targeted by the same North Korean campaign and received the same institutional silence in response. Not a vigilante army, something more disciplined than that. A community of researchers who understand exactly what they're looking at, united by a shared experience of being hunted by a state and abandoned by their own government. He calls it the Funk Project. The meaning is exactly what it sounds like. One hacker had taken the country offline. A coordinated group could make the damage permanent. When Wired magazine publishes the story, the world meets P4X for the first time. Not the complete picture, but enough. The one-man operation, the weeks of sustained outages, the Funk Project. The reaction is divided. Some find the technical achievement remarkable. Others find the legal implications genuinely alarming. Most manage to hold both reactions at the same time. The US government says nothing, no confirmation, no denial, no comment of any kind. After the story breaks, Alejandro makes a decision that surprises everyone around him. He goes public, voluntarily, attaches his real name to everything. His reasoning is strategic. Staying hidden is no longer the safest option. And if North Korea eventually identifies the man behind the operation, being a known public figure provides a form of protection that anonymity cannot. Anything that happens to a named person is harder to make disappear quietly than what happens to a ghost. He gives the interviews. His home address stays private. His family stays out of it. But Alejandro Caceres becomes a public figure, part of a conversation about the gap between the threat that state-sponsored hackers pose to private individuals and the protection those individuals actually receive. That gap, he argues, is the real story. And for a significant period after going public, every time he leaves his house, he wears a jacket with kevlar panels sewn inside. Not because of a confirmed threat, because he has done the math on what a regime like this is capable of, and concluded that a reinforced jacket is a reasonable precaution. He calculated the threat. He dressed accordingly. He kept going. The story of P4X does not end with an arrest. It does not end with a missile. What it ends with is a question, a short one. Was he right? Legally, no. He violated laws across multiple jurisdictions, and the hostile nature of his target does not change that. But the moral question is something else entirely, and the moral question is the one that actually matters, because the next person who decides the institutions have failed them might not have his discipline, might not have his carefully constructed sense of who deserves what, might not be targeting a regime with concentration camps. And the laws that didn't stop Alejandro Caceres won't stop them either. He's still out there, still watching the same networks he mapped years ago. And somewhere in Pyongyang, someone is still trying to piece together exactly what happened in January 2022. Whether it's finished, they should probably assume it isn't. Now, the man you just heard about operated entirely in the shadows. No name, no face, just a handle and a grudge. But there is another kind of person entirely, someone who built one of the most controversial platforms in internet history and did it completely in the open. No alias, no mask, just a name, a server, and a decision to dare every government and every copyright lawyer on the planet to come and stop him. His name is Gottfried Svartholm, and the platform he built, the Pirate Bay, didn't just change the internet. It forced an entire industry to rethink what ownership means in the digital age. Governments fell over each other, trying to shut it down. Courts issued rulings. ISPs were ordered to block it, and every single time it came back. That story is already on this channel. It is waiting for you right here.